If comfort really fulfilled us, why are anxiety, depression, and loneliness still rising across the developed world? We've been told life should get easier, that the goal is to eliminate effort. Smarter tools, safer choices, softer living. And in many ways, we've succeeded. We've built a world where pain is optional, risk is outsourced, and comfort is constant. But beneath the surface of that comfort, something's gone missing. We are not struggling. We are not fighting. We are not becoming. Nietzsche called it spiritual stagnation. A condition of the modern world where people no longer strive to rise, but settle. They avoid pain, avoid effort, avoid greatness, and then wonder why life feels so flat. To him, comfort wasn't progress. It was regression, a clever trap that sells us peace but robs us of meaning. He predicted a future filled with what he called the last men. People who no longer dream of overcoming, but dream of comfort alone. They seek pleasure, not purpose. Security, not struggle. They live longer, but they live less. And now that future has arrived. With padded lives, frictionless choices, endless convenience. And yet we are anxious, restless, lost. Nietzsche's words feel like prophecy now. Not because he was against technology or happiness, but because he knew that comfort unchecked becomes a cage. The question isn't whether life can be easier. It's whether a life without resistance is even worth living. To understand how we ended up here, and what Nietzsche tried to warn us about, we need to look deeper. Not just at comfort itself, but at what it replaces. It didn't happen overnight. The rise of comfort was gradual, seductive. At first, it was survival. Technology made life safer. Medicine gave us longer lifespans. Machines replaced our hardest labor, and for a while these were breakthroughs. We overcame nature's cruelty. We reduced suffering. We created margin for leisure. But something else slipped in. Comfort stopped being a luxury and became the default. Now everything inconvenient is called a problem. Discomfort is treated like a design flaw. Can't concentrate? Take a pill. Can't sleep? Play white noise. Can't face a hard conversation? Text it instead. We've outsourced difficulty, and in doing so, we've outsourced growth. Nietzsche believed that human beings were made for tension, for resistance. He saw hardship not as a curse, but as the raw material for greatness. His entire philosophy is built around the idea of becoming something more, through confrontation, not escape. But in our modern world, confrontation is avoided at all costs. We've designed systems to prevent emotional discomfort. We remove all friction, not just physical, but existential. We use phrases like self-care and balance, not to restore ourselves, but to justify avoidance. And slowly, we've begun to mistake comfort for health, safety for truth, ease for progress. But here's what Nietzsche would have pointed out. A life without struggle doesn't protect you, it weakens you. Because the muscles of the soul, courage, purpose, resilience, they only grow when stretched. And in the absence of that stretch, something deeper atrophies. Comfort didn't kill struggle. It just buried it under soft surfaces. And to see what that did to our spirit, we need to meet the people Nietzsche feared most. Nietzsche gave them a name, the last men. They are not tyrants, not monsters, not villains. They are ordinary, average, comfortable. They do not aspire to greatness because they've been taught that ambition is dangerous. They avoid pain, not because they are weak, but because the world told them it was wise. They laugh at the idea of struggle, at sacrifice, at meaning, and they survive. To Nietzsche, these were the people of the future, the end point of civilization's quest for ease. People who've had the sharp edges of life sanded down for them. People who've grown allergic to difficulty, physical, mental, or moral. Their lives are frictionless. Their desires are shallow. Their inner world is quiet. Not because it is peaceful, but because it is empty. They chase dopamine, not direction. Comfort, not conquest. Pleasure, not passion. And because they never confront themselves, they never become themselves. Nietzsche didn't fear the last men because they were evil. He feared them because they were content. Content with mediocrity, content with distractions, content with never asking, "Is this all there is?" In a world built to prevent suffering, they forgot that suffering is often the birthplace of transformation. They mock those who seek more. They warn against pushing too hard. They treat passion as instability and comfort as virtue. But here's the danger. When you build your identity around comfort, anything that threatens it becomes your enemy. Challenge becomes offensive. Discomfort becomes trauma. Growth becomes impossible. Nietzsche saw this as the end of the human spirit. Not a crash, but a slow fading out. And if we want to understand how he thought we could resist this decay, we need to look at his idea of overcoming. Nietzsche's entire philosophy orbits around one idea: become who you are. But what he meant wasn't simple. He didn't mean be yourself. He meant forge yourself through tension, suffering, and becoming. He believed that comfort doesn't reveal character. It hides it. It's only through hardship, through resistance, that we discover who we are capable of becoming. To Nietzsche, discomfort wasn't just a byproduct of growth. It was the fuel, the raw material for transformation. The modern world says, avoid stress, minimize friction, seek peace. Nietzsche says, walk straight into the fire and bring something back with you. He admired those who could endure chaos and create meaning, not because suffering is noble, but because it's unavoidable, and trying to escape it makes you weak. His idea of the Übermensch, the overman, was not someone born powerful. It was someone who becomes powerful by facing what others run from. Someone who doesn't numb the pain, but listens to it. Who doesn't collapse under pressure, but uses it to rise. We live in a culture that rewards avoidance. Quit the job that stresses you. Cut off anyone who challenges you. Medicate anything that hurts. But Nietzsche would ask, what if the pain isn't the problem, but the path? He believed that your struggles, your failures, your discomfort, your inner conflict are not obstacles. They are invitations to wake up, to build something stronger from what was broken. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the chisel. And if you blunt that chisel with too much comfort, you may never carve out who you were meant to be. But there's a cost to this mindset, a real one. There's a reason most people don't become who they're meant to be. It's not because they're incapable, it's because the cost is terrifying. Becoming requires sacrifice, not of money or time or comfort, but of identity, of the stories you tell yourself, of the excuses you've made safe. And for most people, comfort feels safer than truth. Nietzsche knew this. He didn't expect everyone to rise. In fact, he expected most wouldn't. He called it the herd instinct, our tendency to follow, to obey, to conform. It's easier to move with the group than to stand alone. Easier to repeat than to think. Easier to scroll than to suffer. Becoming means letting go of what protects you, even if it soothes you. The job that drains your soul but pays your rent. The routine that numbs your ambition. The people who validate your mediocrity. Comfort isn't passive, it's addictive. And addiction always comes with withdrawal. The moment you try to change, you'll feel it. Doubt, isolation, resistance from others. You'll question everything. You'll want to go back. And that's why most don't become. They choose the cage. Because it's warm, predictable, padded. But Nietzsche wasn't offering a prescription for happiness. He was offering a blueprint for transcendence. He believed that the pain of becoming is the price of being alive in the fullest sense, and that those who choose comfort over growth aren't living. They're just not dying. So the real question isn't whether becoming is worth it. The question is whether the alternative is truly living. But if Nietzsche's warning was this loud, and we still walked into the trap, what does that say about where we are now? Nietzsche warned about the decay of values, but he never imagined how efficient we'd become at replacing meaning with comfort. Today, the last men aren't a warning. They're a lifestyle. We build apps to eliminate boredom. We outsource decisions to algorithms. We sterilize challenge with convenience, and we call it progress. We're more connected than ever, but lonelier than ever. We have more knowledge, but less wisdom. More freedom, but less will. Nietzsche predicted this, that when God was declared dead, not by violence, but by neglect, something had to fill the void. Not deeper thought, not higher purpose, but consumption. We worship the next thing, the next meal, the next show, the next scroll. We've turned ourselves into receptors for distraction, and underneath all of it, we're starving. Starving for depth, for direction, for something that demands more of us than passive survival. Nietzsche believed that without something to overcome, we become fragile, not just physically, but spiritually. And fragility doesn't lead to peace. It leads to fear. Look around, and you'll see it. Fear of pain, fear of confrontation, fear of being alone, of failing, of standing for something too real. So we flatten the edges, label everything toxic, call effort burnout, confuse comfort with safety, and safety with virtue. Nietzsche never wrote about TikTok or therapy culture or the 40-hour work week. But he didn't need to, because his message wasn't about any one system. It was about what happens to a soul that stops climbing and starts waiting. Waiting for life to be easy. Waiting to be happy. Waiting for meaning to show up, without struggle. But that kind of life doesn't wait. It vanishes. Nietzsche didn't write to comfort. He wrote to wake people up. Not with answers, but with alarms. Because he knew most people would rather sleepwalk through life than face themselves fully awake. And what he saw over 100 years ago was a warning that one day people would trade purpose for pleasure, strength for softness, becoming for surviving. That day is now. We are surrounded by options, by upgrades, by systems that promise ease. But every time we avoid struggle, we lose a piece of ourselves. A little bit of clarity, a little bit of courage, a little bit of that raw edge that makes life feel real. Comfort is not evil, but unchecked, it becomes a silent killer. It kills drive, kills creativity, kills the friction where meaning is born. And when we lose meaning, we don't fall apart all at once. We rot quietly, with smiles on our faces. Nietzsche's challenge wasn't to suffer for suffering's sake. It was to stop fleeing the very things that make us grow. To choose effort over numbness. To choose clarity over distraction. To choose the pain of becoming over the slow death of staying the same. That choice is brutal, but it's also sacred. Because every time you reject comfort as your master, every time you embrace struggle not as punishment, but as raw material, you're not just resisting the world Nietzsche feared. You're rebuilding what it means to be fully, wildly alive. And in a world that rewards the opposite, that alone is a revolution.